Okay, welcome back to United Pubcast, the podcast, the Man United Supporters Club here in Sydney. Larry, on Sunday night, Sunday evening, had a good Sunday at the pub, but I was robbed of $650 on a $5 bet, Larry. So I'm not in the greatest of moods. My bet came all the way through, except for the favourite who lost. But other than that, how was your Sunday?
Yeah, good. I just had El Jannah for those who are local in Sydney. Cracking charcoal chicken, Lebanese cuisine, good garlic sauce, or as the Lebanese people would say, the toum. Beautiful stuff. That's how you have a good Sunday, Tom.
Yeah, no, well, it was good. It was my first UFC card back at the pub since lockdown. But and I picked one of the upsets, but yeah, unfortunate. But we will get into Man United, which is what everyone is here for. So obviously just your general sort of match review, but there are a lot of talking points. It was a unique 1-0, I guess. A lot to dissect in terms of the result was obviously good, but the performance wasn't exactly what we sort of desired. But some guys in the comments, good to see people. Rob, good evening, mate. Josh, evening, lads. Was grim watching on a hangover, but a win is a win and important momentum going into the busy Christmas period. And Brentford on Tuesday. That game has snuck up. I saw someone post and I was thinking, geez, that's only a couple of days away. So we'll talk about that at the end because it might not be time for a preview of that game, but we'll see how we go. Matt, hope you're keeping well, mate. Good to see you. Mike as well. Wes over from Adelaide. Good to see you, mate. And a few others in the chat. Ashby, good to see you, mate. And Dion, good to see you all. So, Larry, we'll get straight into it because this is a weird one. First of all, I was over the moon with the result. I was very happy. And as the idiot that I am, I went online after the match and I found out I was the only person happy with the win. So just your thoughts. We'll get into team selection and everything, but just your general thoughts at full time. What were you thinking?
Look, I think in the context of a season, and this is the reality of it, when you look at a season, Tom, you're not going to win. You're not going to play free-flowing, attacking football every single match. We've said on here countless times. There's two sides in a game of football, and Norwich set up really well, really effectively. They're in a similar position to what United are. They've got a new manager. They had fairly positive results. I want to say 2 draws and a win before the Tottenham result. So positive form. I know Tottenham spanked them up a little bit, but they're going to come. Look, Manchester United is the biggest game for every team on the Premier League calendar or the fixture list. That's the reality of it. And I think we need to apply that context before we say, yes, United were poor because they were poor, and we'll dissect that in a little bit. But the reality is we come away with 3 points when 2 or 3 weeks ago, we definitely wouldn't have. And I think we just need to say good result and keep pushing forward. That's it.
Yeah, well, the thing which I always say, and you brought up there in regards to, well, there are 2 teams, and here Dion saying thought Norwich were really good today, and that is the part which Ralph Rangnick sort of alluded to as well. But at the end of the day, they were. Forget that they're second, or they are bottom of the league, and they're going to get relegated, and all this and that. They're professional footballers, and they played well today. They put us under a lot of pressure, and United had to deal with that pressure and ultimately pass the test. Now, yes, we did have an individual who played an important role in saving us, in sort of getting the 3 points across the line. But at the end of the day, it wasn't good enough from United. But at the end of the day, it was good enough. We got the points. But performance in regards to the standards we want to set, okay, it wasn't up to that level, but ultimately got the job done. And I just think I can't guarantee you, but go back to the last 5 Premier League winners. I'm sure if you go back to their Christmas period, every time they won the league, I'm not saying we're in that position where we're going to win the league, but you look at the best teams, I'm sure they've all probably played the team in a relegation battle and won 1-0 away from home after a scrappy performance and maybe lucky to get out with the win. Now, again, it's not saying, okay, that's acceptable now because we're going to go win a title. That's not the case. But a tough game, but tough conditions. It was obviously pissing down rain. Now, that's not an excuse, but it's tough conditions. Norwich made it a battle. We had to battle. And at the end of the day, we're going to get into sort of 4-2-2 and systems and players and tactics. At the end of the day, it's still a new system. I'm sure these players on the training ground now, it's almost feeling like another mini pre-season they're in the middle of. So they're training hard. They're in the middle of a heavy fixture pile-up. They're probably tired. They're probably feeling it a little bit this time of the year and ultimately just a little bit off the pace today.
And that's a really good point, Tom. And I think the other thing to take into account, we saw obviously a second-string team play midweek against Young Boys. You have to think, the fact that Ralph Rangnick's style is so intense, high press, if they're doing that, if they're getting all that volume in at training, which you have to imagine that they have been this week, there had to be the element of weighing up the risk of, could we then see the side effect of that come match day? And I think we did. Surprisingly, United did sit off, but the reality is Norwich didn't set up for United to press. The second they got the ball, they lobbed it. I got to say, I've never seen a team in Norwich, like they didn't even look to counter United. They truthfully set up. to sit back and not concede. That's it. Like every time United looked to counter, there were 4 players back there. We were never in a position where we had the extra man. So
I think there was one time, I don't know if it was Harry Maguire or Lindelof released the ball. It might have been De Gea released the ball, maybe an early throw or a quick rollout. And I forget, Sancho or Rashford was sprinting forward. And I thought just from the camera angle, they had the ball and I thought, we're in here. This is a break. We're going to outnumber them at the back. Norwich had 6 players back.
yeah.
We were on a clear counter-attack. We were sprinting forward, bombing forward, and they had all the players back. The camera just didn't pick them up. And yeah, so I think Norwich, you have to take your hat off to them. I thought they did well. But Ahmad's saying here that it was the most running a lot of the players have done in their United careers. And look, we joke about that, but there is a part of that. It is a shock to the system for them. And it's going to take some time. We say Ralph Rangnick's tactics, that'll take time for him to implement. Well, from the players' point of view, it's going to take their bodies and sort of brains time to sort of catch up as well. Dion say even Fred looked gassed. Yeah, well, I think the players just look tired in terms of things. But at this time of year, I do sort of afford them that sort of opportunity to do that. But Larry, where do you want to start? We'll get into individual performances and we'll talk David De Gea at the end because there's no point talking De Gea in the team selection. He got the 3 points. We'll discuss De Gea there for man of the match. 4-2-2, we're having a chat today in one of our group chats, and you were saying, well, 4-2-2 worked against Crystal Palace. Young boys was young boys. It's a non-talking point. But now, after this performance, you're saying, no, 4-2-2 is not the way forward. I'm just thinking, look, that very well could be the case. We'll dissect it, and we'll have to see Ralph Rangnick in different games, use different systems, see what works. In my opinion, in the way you brought that, I thought, not an overreaction, but I thought, hang on, it's one game. It was good against Crystal Palace, not today. I didn't see anything wrong tactically. It was just, I thought the players individually weren't up for it today.
Look, the reason I'm saying it's not working, and I don't think it will work for United long term, if I look at the strengths of this United side, it's our attacking players. I'm thinking of Jadon Sancho. I'm thinking of Marcus Rashford. And I know the latter's going through an awful time at the moment with form. But the reality is that if you look at our best patch with the ball, it actually came late in the second half when Marcus Rashford was actually hugging the touchline. It was actually came with the introduction of Mason Greenwood. I don't want to say we changed the formation, but I felt Rashford was more inclined to be closer to the sideline. And I just felt we end up a bit too narrow. I know the fullbacks are obviously holding the width there, but I think you're not playing to the strengths of the attacking outlets. I don't like Jadon Sancho right in the middle. I think his strengths as a footballer is, yes, he does like to run at people. He's not rapid quick like, say, a Marcus Rashford. But what he's really effective at is getting one-on-one with players. And I think when you're playing him in this attacking midfield option or an advanced midfielder, I feel like you're taking away from his game. The other thing is, I know people had it with Bruno Fernandes today. He gave away the ball 27 times. That's obviously been well publicized. But I feel it's such a rigid system in the sense Bruno likes to float. And I feel the system is almost restricting him to one side of the pitch and making him play further up the pitch. And I'm just thinking, are we utilizing the talents at our disposal? And I'm just starting to think that this system doesn't actually allow for United to do that.
It will be interesting to see sort of what balance we find in the systems because he will change it and Bruno will play a different position or Sancho will play wide. Then we'll see, okay, against what teams that works, what team it doesn't work. But in regards to Bruno, and you're right about Sancho, but in regards to Bruno, who is playing attack in midfield, but as you say, a little bit shifted towards the left or the wing type thing, I think that does change things if we were to play well today and Alex Tellez played as a left winger. Because you look at the 3 best teams in the league. Chelsea, their fullbacks are their top scorers, I think, from memory, or pretty much their most dangerous attackers. Liverpool, Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, their biggest attacking threats. And Man City, always their fullbacks pretty much play as wingers. Now, our fullbacks today played as fullbacks. Yeah, occasionally got forward, but they were fullbacks. I think if you have your left back or your right back playing as wingers, and not as wingers, but playing that far up the pitch because you're dominating and attacking, well, that'll allow Bruno Fernandes to say, well, no, hang on, I've got the wide option there. I can come in and play my natural role in the middle. I'm not restricted to the side because we do have that width. When Tellez isn't forward, well, Bruno then says, well, hang on, no one's here. I'll go and provide the width, which isn't his natural game. So I think it's one of those ones, if we were to play well and have those fullbacks bombing forward, I think you're going to see more out of Bruno, which is probably what we saw that first 30, 40 minutes against Crystal Palace at home.
Look, I take your point, and like you said, it is a new system. I have no doubt United would improve with it. I personally am just not a fan of this formation. I think football has moved in a way where you want to have the extra body in the middle of the park. I just think you're leaving a big donut-sized hole in United's midfield, or a gap between the strikers and the attacking midfielders or the wingers, if you like. And I personally am just not a fan of it. But look, I'm not one to sit here and tell you, look, I'm just a guy on YouTube. I'm not going to tell you I'm more intelligent than Ralph Rangnick. Obviously, he's the one whose job's on the line week in, week out. So let's see how we go with it. I look at the match. I think there are many factors for why United didn't play well. But I look at it and I'm thinking, Ralph Rangnick's referred to this control. And I just felt United didn't have any sort of rhythm about them in the middle of the park. And I just think with that extra body there, maybe we could have allowed that. I think if you played Bruno in his preferred position, which is central in a number 10 role, yeah, he'll still be frustrating, but I think you're restricting him at the moment. And I think our attack would be more free-flowing if you allow him to play there. But we'll wait and see.
Well, I agree with that, but I was going to go into midfield and even some of the defenders I want to touch on before we get into sort of Ronaldo's penalty and the 3-2-1s. But Dion here brings up a name who we might as well discuss because bit of a discussion point for me. I have huge concerns about Rashford, even under Ole. I don't know what he is. Where do you want to start on Marcus Rashford? Because I don't know. It's not a sell Rashford, or he isn't good enough, or he doesn't have a future at United. I still think as big as my concerns are on Marcus Rashford, I still believe he has the attributes to go on and become a Man United legend. And then, well, obviously, if you're going to become a Man United legend, you do have what it takes. But he was a big concern when Ralph Rangnick came in for me. I said he will be one player who will struggle in a system both on the ball and especially off the ball. And I'm just thinking, well, he hasn't been sub. I forget. Did he come off today or at the end, or did he come off late against Crystal Palace? I forget what the subs were, but he has been played, and Sancho's been hooked before him, etc. So at the moment, Ralph Rangnick has favoured him a little bit, and not favoured him in a bad way, but persisted with him. And it's very frustrating because Sancho, I thought, was having a decent game. He gets hooked. Rashford was having one of his worst games? I don't know if that's an overreaction or not, but I thought Rashford was extremely poor. He stays on the pitch. I thought that was really harsh on Jadon Sancho. Just your thoughts on the ever-developing Marcus Rashford situation?
Yeah, it's a weird one, Tommy. He hasn't looked sharp since he's come back. He came back in. I think he scored a couple goals, but his overall game hasn't looked impressive. And we had this discussion either in the last episode or the episode before that. There was some time this week, and we're having this debate around have our players actually developed? Has Marcus Rashford become a more well-rounded player in his time in the top flight? Has Mason Greenwood improved? And we landed in a spot where we said, well, you know what? They have improved, but have they improved as much as you'd like? Questionable. And I think with Marcus Rashford at the moment, he's clearly lacking match fitness. He did have a lengthy layoff. He hasn't had an off season. I think that is worth remembering. And to be honest, he's just having an awful time of it. I think what Rashford needs to do is just go back to basics. I think when he's not in form, he tends to go back to just being very direct, very tunnel vision. He'll run at people, and when it doesn't come off, we're sitting here coming on.
Are his basics good enough, though? Like, I think his strength is almost his unpredictability and that bit of magic. I think when he plays football, I don't think that's really his game.
I take your point, Tom, but like if you can think back to the ball he played for Mason Greenwood against Liverpool in the FA Cup last season, he's capable of a brilliant pass. He's capable of hugging the touchline or occupying a wider position and being a ball player as opposed to a ball runner. I'm just wondering, would Rashford benefit from maybe being a provider of others while he's trying to figure out his own form, then decide to run on the odd occasion rather than thinking, I need to dribble past the person to get my confidence back? And I say this here, he could easily have an assist today if Ronaldo very oddly doesn't rocket what you'd consider a sit-up for someone of his standard. But overall, you look at his 90 minutes, you look at what he's putting out this season, I just think maybe he should focus on keeping possession, keeping the ball. And then I think if he gets those things right, then he'll get his touch back, then he can start running back at people again.
My next point is the defence, and obviously we'll touch on Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof in the defence, but I just want one more thing, almost ties into a Harry Maguire situation as well, which Rob brings up here, how he stayed on instead of Sancho is crazy. And I'm just thinking, who knows? I'm sure these things are not in contracts, but here we are as fans. We're going to overreact and we're going to dissect it. We talk about Harry Maguire not being dropped because he has the armband around his arm. We're saying, well, they won't drop the captain, even though that's the right decision. They won't do it because he's the captain. He's got a bit of fabric on his arm. There is something about Marcus Rashford as well. Solskjaer caved to him. Now, I'm not saying Ralph Rangnick is caving to him, but the evidence we have over the 2 games, he is. Now, I'm not saying that is the case. However, do you feel there is a pressure? Ralph Rangnick has come in and said all the right things, looks the big man, but ultimately we know who pulls the strings at Man United. It's those above, and that's Ed Woodward and the Glazers. Now, do you think... Now, obviously, I know this is an overreaction. It's not the case, but there is a feeling I get there is a pressure from the club to persist with Marcus Rashford and get the best out of him. And I think just what you said, Jadon Sancho should have stayed on the pitch. Marcus Rashford should have come off. Now, at the end of the day, Rashford came on, we got a penalty, not that he was involved, but we won the game. So Ralph could say, well, it was the right decision and fair play. But I'm just thinking, do you feel there is a pressure from the club and Ralph Rangnick will be not told to play Marcus Rashford, but kind of nudged to, really?
I don't think so, but let me flip your question back to you, Tom. If you think of Ralph Rangnick, you think of the intensity he likes to play with, and then you look at the comments he made midweek around Mason Greenwood. Now, Mason did play the full 90 minutes, which is worth taking note of. So he was never really going to start this game. Edison Cavani's out injured. Martial, his agent has come out, and I'm sure we'll discuss that. He looks like he's about to leave Manchester United. So when you look at all of that and you take all of that into account, what option does he really have? I think it has to be Rashford by default. But now when Edison comes back, now that will be interesting because I think then there will be a case to say maybe Rashford does go back to the bench and we'll have to play his way back in by getting a few intervals here and there.
Well, look, Cavani's the one here, which Wes says Varane Cavani. But in regards to strikers, yes, Cavani. Now, long term, that's obviously not the answer because Cavani's off. Maybe he's off in January. He's definitely off in 6 months' time. But in the short term, yes, Cavani is the right scenario, in my opinion. When it's a toss-up between Greenwood and Rashford, who's a better option? For me, it's Greenwood at the moment, and rightly so. However, from a manager's point of view, you can understand that there is a question to be had there. And if Ralph Rangnick, who knows more about football than us, is choosing Marcus Rashford, okay, that's his decision. Fair play to him. He's probably correct more than we are. However, you're right in terms of who else is there? And Rashford is not a bad option. He just, in the case of Harry Maguire, where Harry Maguire needs drop-in, Marcus Rashford's in the same boat. He needs drop-in, but I just feel there is a pressure from the club because he's on the verge of becoming the next Prime Minister. He's going to be a United legend. I just feel
I feel like Gary Neville's on the verge of becoming Prime Minister. You've seen his Twitter lately?
Someone at Man United's going to be eventually. But I just feel there is that pressure, even if it's like subconscious pressure on managers. Because Rashford is a big ego. I know he's humble and he does all these great things, but he does have a presence about him. He does have power within the game, and especially Man United. So it will be interesting how a manager, whether that be Ralph Rangnick or the next manager, does sort of fade to him. Because I assume Rashford's next contract, I assume he'll start trying to negotiate that in a year or two's time. Whether he deserves it or not, the club are going to be paying him top dollar and probably the highest paid player at the club because that's what Rashford, the package, will demand. And maybe not the footballer, but Rashford is a brand now, and that's something he's created. Fair play to him. But like we see with Paul Pogba and these sort of superstars, Marcus Rashford is in that category, not on ability, but in regards to the whole package, he is. But we'll go further back before we get into actually two more areas of the pitch, midfield and defence. We'll do defence first. What are your thoughts? Your mate Harry Maguire, he's come in for a lot of stick again. I actually thought, and a lot of people won't accept this, I understand that, public enemy number one. I'm not saying he was vintage or put an 8 out of 10 performance or anything, but what he had to do today, both him and Lindelof, they did well. I thought they defended well. I thought all the chances Norwich were creating wasn't off the back of our back four. I think it was those front four losing the ball in dangerous areas and Norwich sort of breaking quite quickly in transition. I thought Harry Maguire and Lindelof as well. Thank God Lindelof is seemingly okay. Obviously came off with a little bit of a scare, but it sounds like he's okay. Fingers crossed. But just your thoughts on the back four, because we did concede so many chances and David De Gea did save us. But ultimately, I thought the centre-backs did quite well, considering what they have been showing in recent weeks.
I thought Diogo Dalot got caught out a little bit this game. There were moments where the winger kept going on his inside shoulder. It was not skinned, but just something he needs to work on, obviously. With Harry Maguire, I think what we're seeing with him is, I agree with you. I think over the 90 minutes, he was solid without being brilliant. But the problem is there was one opportunity, there was one chance, the Norwich defender gets above him, and if David De Gea doesn't pull out an element of heroics, we're talking about Harry Maguire costing United points again. So, and look, and I know that that's really extreme. I know that's what your goalkeeper's there for. But I think unfortunately for Harry Maguire, because he's been so poor this season, everything he does is magnified. Now, if I take that one instance out, I agree with you. I think he was actually quite solid. I can't be too critical, but again, look, this happens. Rio Ferdinand, Nemanja Vidic, I've seen these two greats, world-class defenders beaten in the air. It happens. But again, just in the context of the season, I think people are just easily frustrated, which again, I do understand.
Well, you do flip it as well in the same battle with that same defender, and you talk about fine margin and bailed out by a world-class goalkeeping save. He could have been the match winner, Harry Maguire. He beat that defender to a header in the first half, and Tim Krul tipped it over the bar. If that goes in, we're talking Harry Maguire match winner and having a far different discussion. Now, yes, David De Gea saved him at the end of the day, But yeah, overall, I thought Maguire, well, I thought he was fine. He wouldn't be in contention in my 3-2-1s, but I think he has been given dogs abuse in recent weeks. And today, or 2 clean sheets, really, in 2 games, 2 clean sheets he's been a part of. I thought he did well. Now, moving forward to everyone's favourite, McFred. I'm just going to throw a question to you before we get into 3-2-1s. Besides De Gea, take David De Gea out of this discussion. Fred and McTominay, can you name 2 better outfield players in your opinion today? Because for me, they were our 2 best players. Not that
I
they were great.
have to agree with you. No, I agree 100%. Look, we know their limitations. We're not going to come on here and it's boring. It's almost a boring conversation. So I'll keep that short and sweet. We know what they are as players, but if you're going to look at what they contributed today, where you needed that work rate in the middle of the pitch, talk about keeping possession neat and tidy, both players did that. We had a game where Fred didn't do something stupid. Hallelujah. It's the Sabbath. And Fred, being the religious man that he is, delivers on Sundays. But look, we know what they are, and they're in there to do the job. Until there is a player that United can either sign, because I think, if I'm being honest, I think that's where we're going to find the midfield solution. It's going to come from outside of the club. Until that happens, these 2 are your most reliable players in the midfield. Now, they're not the solution. I don't think you're going to win a premiership with those 2 players being your starters week in, week out. But today they were good. And I think if they weren't on the pitch, we're talking about a United draw or a United loss. Simple as that.
Yeah, definitely. I thought they stood up in what so many people, I think, don't accept or maybe don't understand how important, or not even how important, but how difficult, how important it is for that midfield battle, whether you win or lose it. But to be able to compete, I don't think they realize how quick it is in there. Well, we see on the TV, we see a player control the ball and spray a pass. We think, okay, do that next time. Everyone can just control the ball and spray a pass. It's 100 mile an hour. And when your back's against the wall and the other team's pressing, it is hard for midfield. And ultimately, if you go away from home in the Premier League and keep a clean sheet, now, yes, David Hay did saves, but at the end of the day, facts are facts. The midfield, I thought they did quite well today. And again, not to Man United standards and where we want to sort of move forward to, but overall, I thought they sort of really battled hard, and that's all we can ask for. These players are better than us, which we discussed last week after our charity game. We said the only thing we can demand from a player, because they're better than us, they can do the skill better than us, we can't criticise, or ideally we can't criticise them there. We can criticise them when they're not working, when they're not putting 100% effort in. So ultimately, that's all we can actually demand from them, and they do that. So fair play to a minimum expectations, but I think they deserve credit because they do get dogs abuse.
I'll tell you something, Tom. You know who Fred and McTominay are in the mold of? You know Park Ji-sung? I swear to you, if he was playing in this Manchester United side, you go on Twitter,
He'd be hated.
He would be hated. You'd have big accounts, people who are immature, those who say certain players should play over other players. They'd be here saying Park Ji-sung isn't a Manchester United player. He's not fit to wear the shirt. He's a disgrace. It'd be all the same thing. That's the mold Fred and McTominay are in, whether you like that or not. Now, Park Ji-sung got trusted to play in Champions League finals. So make of that by Sir Alex Ferguson. So make of that what you will. I think when United are going to win a premiership, those 2 players or one of those players will be a very reliable squad player. Now, when United get into that position where you can bring in a Fred or a McTominay in a game against the young boys, when you're sealed up in the group stages, then United will be in a really strong spot. Simple as that.
Yeah, no, definitely. As I said, in this short term, the next 6 weeks to 6 months type thing, the rest of the season, I think they'll be crucial, especially McTominay. I thought he was good again today. But yeah, long term, if Ralph Rangnick gets in charge of the recruitment or whatever, yes, go and improve 100%. However, at the moment, they're the tools we have. You have to use them. And ultimately, Ralph Rangnick, who everyone loves, and look, I love as well, he's picking Fred McTominay over Donny and Nemanja Matic. We criticise the selection of them, but praise Ralph Rangnick. Well, we've got to praise Ralph Rangnick for picking McTominay and Fred then, because he's done the job so far. 2 clean sheets, 6 points. But Matt here, I think this is in regards to the Harry Maguire chance that hit him in the back. It wasn't the cleanest header, but I still remember a goal we were discussing, one of the great goals. Chicharito hit his face, like kicked it into his own face. So you take what you can get. George saying Goldbridge and other fan channels need to hold back their agenda on McFred. We all know there are limitations, but they still have to be applauded for good performances, which is completely right. But at the end of the day, it won't be. People, when they do have certain agendas on these big platforms, they need to keep them up. That's just what happens. But we will move forward on to something we haven't discussed. Ronaldo, I thought he was it his poorest display in a United shirt? I think maybe close to it. I thought he was quite ineffective. He didn't quite get going. However, big penalty, big moment. And ultimately, I said this on the previous show, said we're going to get a penalty today and Tim Krul is going to save it. So when we did get that penalty and Tim Krul was playing his mind games, I was not confident at all. Even with Ronaldo there, I saw the rain down. I saw the Norwich fans; they were loving it, type thing. I'm the Norwich fans as well. There's one thing you don't do to Ronaldo: don't boo him. As soon as they started building, you knew Ronaldo was going to score the winner. So Norwich, I think they're going to get what they deserve. They got what they deserve today for doing that, and ultimately they'll get what they deserved going back to the Championship where they belong. Not that I'm bitter to Norwich, but they shouldn't be in the Premier League. They just take up a space every 2 seasons type thing. But just your thoughts on Ronaldo's penalty before I go off on Norwich for no reason?
Yeah, look, good, well taken penalty. Only thing of note he did in the game. Look, I can't be critical of strikers in these sorts of matches. Just you don't get service, you don't get space. He might as well have had 6 players on him. The Portuguese. It's just one of those games where your striker has no room to be brilliant. So I can sit here and be critical and say he didn't do anything, but well, how was he ever going to when we're counterattacking the 6 players? So when we're against a set defense, he definitely wasn't going to do anything. So can't be critical. But at the end of the day, belting penalty. And Tim Krul, very unprofessional, you could argue. He did everything he could to throw Ronaldo off. He walked away. He was pointing at things. He did everything he could.
I wouldn't say it's. I know what you mean by saying that, but I wouldn't say it's unprofessional. I'd want David De Gea doing that. That's part of
I take it, but David De Gea doesn't do it. But look, at the end, look, whatever, shithousery, and I've got time for that. But at the end of the day, Ronaldo, lots of pressure. He could have been thrown off, but he's a clutch player. I think I saw a stat today. He has scored 196 clutch goals. So the final goal in a game that goes on to get his team the victory. So hell of a player.
I think it was another one at 120 or 160. I forget the numbers. Something in the hundreds oppositions he's now scored against. I don't think he ever scored against Norwich in his first time round at United. So, as I said, a lot of players don't play 160 games for throughout their career or 160 goals. He scored against 160 teams type thing. So it is fascinating. But look, we will move forward to everyone's favourite part of the show. And we'll just start on 3 points and David De Gea, because that is who's going to get the 3 points. It's not up for discussion. If someone does, feel free to throw McTominay in there for 3 points if you want to get in my good books. But David De Gea, where do you want to start? Because where I want to start, and not to spin a negative on it, because I just want to praise David De Gea. But this is where I come back to last week. Dean Henderson came out of the box and cleared a ball out for a throw-in against Young Boys, and suddenly he should be our number 1 goalkeeper. And I thought everyone was jumping the gun there. I think, hold your horses. Okay, that's good. Dean Henderson, it does come off his line quite well. That is a strength of his game. David De Gea is a better goalkeeper. David De Gea plays for us. Ralph Rangnick has said he's the number 1. David De Gea saves our bacon again. What more can you say about him?
Oh, man, David De Gea has been brilliant this season. And look, I think, I know it was a bit tongue-in-cheek in our little football group, giving me grief for saying Henderson should have come in last season. I don't back down from that. I still maintain that at the time, David De Gea was playing really poor, and we had a goalkeeper who has proven himself in the Premier League. So I don't think it was outrageous to say, give Henderson a go. However, this season, it started in the off-season. Solskjaer even made note of it. De Gea was back 2 weeks earlier than he needed to be. He was putting in the work. You heard he had his eating regimen down pat, his training down pat. So David De Gea knew there was a fight on his hands, and he could have easily spat the dummy. He could have been in his position, which, I'll get into Anthony Martial. He could have easily been in a position where he said, look, I've been here for 10 years. I've won the Premier League title. They're no closer to winning the Premier League title. He could have sought to go elsewhere, but he's worked hard this season, and he's been our best player. As our 3-2-1s will attest to that. Unreal today. If he's not on the pitch, we definitely don't win. No debate. Men of the match. Still delivered.
Look, I remember the Dean Henderson, David De Gea debate last season, and even now, and I'll stick by the same point. It's David De Gea all day for me. Always has been, always will be. However, I would stand by Solskjaer's decision if it was the case, and I'd stand by Ralph Rangnick tomorrow if he chose Dean Henderson and just got rid of one of them. You can have both of them. They're both currently at the club, but you need to get rid of one of them, in my opinion. You need to have a clear number 1 and a clear number 2. Now, De Gea is the clear number 1 for me. If Ralph Rangnick turns around tomorrow and says, this is the way I want to play, and it's going to be Dean Henderson, I'll disagree, but I'll say, okay, fair play. It's your team. You're doing the right thing by what you think is the right thing to do. So that is my tick of Dean Henderson. I say, if he's going to be the number 1 because the manager wants to, I don't agree, but that's fine. That's the manager's decision, and he needs complete control. So I'd understand that. But ultimately, it's David De Gea for me. I think he's been absolutely brilliant since he's come in. We'll just go to a few comments before we move on to 2 points. But George here is saying 3 for De Gea, 2 for McTominay, 1 for Fred. George going as well. De Gea, Fred, McTominay. Ahmad, De Gea, McSauce, and Ronaldo. I think Ronaldo's an interesting case. He could be in for a point for me. It'll be interesting. Dion, 3 for McTominay, 2 for or 3 for De Gea, 2 for McTominay, 1 for Ronaldo. I think that'd be pretty close to mine as well, I think. But I'll definitely dissect it with you. Josh going De Gea 3, Fred for 2, McTominay for 1. Larry, the fax machine, our savior. I still want to. I'd love for that to come out in like 10 years' time. Like Ed Woodward releases a book or something, or they come out and sort of actually dissect exactly what happened there. From my absolutely no knowledge of what happened, it wasn't actually the fax machine. It very well could have been. From what I know, it was almost like an encrypted email. United sort of played a little bit of funny buggers with the actual email, which they use a special kind of software for sort of processing transfers type thing, and it needs an encrypted email, and United sort of made it as hard as they quite could. It wasn't actually the fax machine, but who knows? It very well might have been. Rob saying give almost pretty much all 6 points to David De Gea, but 5 for De Gea, 1 for Ronaldo, and Trev saying 3 for De Gea, 2 for McFred, and 1 for Mag Lindelof. So yeah, a bit of a combination of points. But on those 2 points and 1 point, Larry, I would be going Scott McTominay. I know a lot of people won't agree with me. I have seen his name in there a little bit, so maybe some people do. I just think he has been good. And it's why I said when Ralph Rangnick came in, I said McTominay will play a crucial part of this team. And ultimately, in our 2 wins, I think he has been key for Ralph Rangnick. And he's performed well. Not to the level, not to a Roy Keane or Paul Scholes where we want to be, but for what he is and what United, the position we find ourselves in at the moment, McTominay has done well. And anyone who won't accept that, like George has said a little bit earlier in regards to some other bigger channels and accounts, simply an agenda-driven.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's so easy to be critical of a player who you can see isn't Paul Scholes. You know what I mean? Like, it's just lazy. But what's your solution? Like, you know what I mean? I can sit here and I can tell you, Tom, I don't like the house I'm in. I want to live in the big mansion across the road. Well, it's not as simple as that. I can't just rock up with a gun and tell that bloke get out and I'll occupy his house, can I? At the end of the day, you gotta use the tools that you have at your disposal. And we can sit here and I could tell you Fred's rubbish, or I could tell you McTominay's not Michael Carrick, and these are all obvious things, right? At the end of the day, you got to look at what do you have available at your disposal. Donny van de Beek has not done anything of note where I can say you have to drop one of these 2 players for him. He simply has not. Now, we both know he's a better technical footballer. I know Andreas Pereira is a better technical footballer than Scott McTominay. That's your favorite line, Tom. But at the end of the day, we know that these 2 players are trusted, they're effective. And when you have Jose Mourinho, Ralph Rangnick, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Michael Carrick trusting the McFred combination, the McFred burger with extra sauce, we have to trust that those are our 2 best midfielders. As simple as that. McTominay did a shift today, and I agree with you, 2 points.
And we're having a very different discussion about McTominay's performance. Ahmad makes a point here. The pass from McTominay put on a plate for Ronaldo alone gets him the 2 points, which shows his game isn't limited. If Ronaldo puts that in, let's say first time finish, puts it in, we're talking not a world-class assist, but a crucial assist by Scott McTominay. And I think, did he play the cross in where Ronaldo won the penalty? So I don't know. Obviously, I think Ronaldo gets the assist for that, probably for winning it. But I think McTominay was that one who played that cross in. So McTominay, for me, would you agree for the 2 points?
Yeah, no debate for me. Look, I think it's a difficult one. I could almost make a case for giving Fred points because I thought his work rate, he was run off the field, Fred, and he's the one who's always got beans in him. But at the end of the day, look, I think McTominay edges it for me. I just thought he kept things ticking over a bit more than what Fred did, which is interesting because I saw McTominay made 47 touches against Crystal Palace, and that makes him the worst midfielder of all time, apparently. But look, I agree with you, mate. I thought McTominay really held solid and he protected the back four.
Yeah, it shaded just over Fred for me. I think a little bit more involved, especially in that second half where we needed to get on the ball a little bit and take the game to Norwich when we're under the pump a little bit. I thought McTominay, something which we have criticised him for, go and hide in a little bit when our back four has the ball. But I thought McTominay stood up for this one. Now, talking about Fred, a lot of people do have him as their 1 point, and you've mentioned him there. The only caveat I would throw, I've got to throw Ronaldo in the discussion. It's a big penalty. It's a big moment. Ultimately, it's the match-winning moment. I'm just thinking, in your opinion, yes, Fred over the 90 minutes played better than Ronaldo. But in terms of the way we value these 3-2-1s, obviously David De Gea had the best performance, but David De Gea won the match. Ultimately, you go back and say Ronaldo won the game as well. So where are you sitting for 1 point?
I think if Bruno takes that penalty, Bruno scores it too. So
you reckon?
That's the thing.
But then we're talking
his record suggests he'd score that, Bruno.
But then we're talking Bruno man of the match. But then we're talking Bruno match winner as well. So
yeah, of course. But that's my point. I think if Ronaldo doesn't score, I think whoever takes that penalty, we're giving them that praise. But if I look over the 90 minutes, I don't think either of those two players had particularly good games. I think there would actually be a more fair argument to say, Fred, you know why I have to take points off Ronaldo? And look, it is a clutch penalty, and it's not easy. It's not. He should have had a double today. I knew that pass from Rashford was a little bit behind him, but I expect better from Cristiano Ronaldo. And I think if he scores that, there's no argument here. You could probably even argue him for 3 points at that point.
Even the McTominay chance, which I alluded to, where McTominay played him in, I thought
that's it.
He came back and got a shot away, but he should have hit it first time. Who am I to say Ronaldo should have done this? But ultimately, he should have hit it first time. And it's an interesting spin on
90 minutes. He does less wrong.
Yeah, actually, look, very hard to not give Ronaldo a point for the match-winning goal and a match-winning penalty in terms of the drama that sort of pursued it. But ultimately, the case you do put forward for Fred in regards to Ronaldo, let's say he does score that penalty, we're looking at 2 or 3 big missed chances, and obviously then going to criticise Ronaldo for losing us the game. So maybe I would allude to maybe 1 point for Fred. I'd be going De Gea, McTominay, and Fred.
That's it. Look, I think we've got 3 very capable penalty takers in our side. You got Marcus Rashford, who showed the balls he's got against PSG a couple years ago. You got Bruno Fernandes, who's a lethal penalty taker. But then you've got Cristiano Ronaldo. I think either of those 3 step up today, they score that penalty. Now, you can say Ronaldo attracts that penalty. I say it was really poor by Max Aarons to even get engaged in Ronaldo in that sense. So I have to lean towards Fred. You're not wrong if you're saying Ronaldo. I think that's just where I'm going over the 90 minutes.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, thanks for all the help in the comments. I see a lot of names there, and even good to see I saw Maguire's name in there, McTominay. So even the players who have got a lot of hate, good to see them getting credit where it's due. But ultimately, it's David De Gea, and rightly so. He's been absolutely amazing this season, and it's almost we are going to continue to do these 3-2-1s because that is what we do. But it's almost pointless now because David De Gea is running away with it. He's quite clear above second and third spot. He's pretty much wrapped it up unless an absolute disaster hits post-Christmas. But fingers crossed he can keep up a bit of good form, but just not as busy. But if you are watching on delay, just leave your 3-2-1s as well in the comments below and create a little bit of discussion there. But thank you, everyone, in the live chat. And if you are watching live, please do leave a like on the video. That would be great. And Larry, we'll pretty much wrap it up now. I just want to talk about, well, obviously, maybe go live tomorrow night. Obviously, the Man United Supporters Club has a meeting, but I'll have to look at the times of the Champions League draw. Round of 16 is tomorrow night. So I'm thinking maybe we can go live for that. Maybe just throw it on, put a UEFA stream on and watch the drama unfold as we draw PSG.
Yes, sounds good. Is there any chance we get anyone else? Do we even know what the options are?
I think there's an interesting one. Again, these are just narratives. These are what you can see a story happening type thing. But I'm looking at Georgia saying here 10 p.m. is the draw. I'll be home by 10 p.m. most likely. So definitely go live. You can see Sporting Lisbon, Ronaldo, Bruno Fernandes, and there's also I think Salzburg in there, which is the obviously connection with Ralf Rangnick. So look, there are stories in there. At the moment, though, what bigger story than potentially our new manager in Pochettino? Now, obviously, the Ralf Rangnick thing does change that, but obviously the Pochettino link, and obviously no bigger story than Ronaldo versus Messi.
Yeah, that's a big one. Though I don't know why that's even a discussion anymore. I don't even know who Lionel Messi is.
Don't say that just before we get PSG. But look, ultimately,
Harry Maguire will have him on toast. Okay, oh my God, that's just that is the thing of nightmares. Can you imagine Lionel Messi running at Harry Maguire? Oh my gosh, he'll do his own ACL. Like his knees will be bending inwards, and he'll just be all over the shop. Obviously, I'm not saying I hope he gets injured, of course, but before someone takes my comment out of context.
When you said ACL after Messi was running, someone thought it was Aaron Wan-Bissaka, because Aaron Wan-Bissaka always looks like he's on the verge of popping a hip out or something, or popping his knee out or something. But you talk about that, and yes, Messi against Maguire is frightening. Messi against any player is pretty much frightening. But look, I remember Scott McTominay absolutely sort of doing Neymar and sort of put Neymar in his back pocket. Over
maybe we can bring Axel Tuanzebe back on loan from Aston Villa just for the two-legged tie.
Yeah, Tuanzebe, interesting to see the career or the future he has under Rangnick. If he sort of notices him or sort of has any thoughts on him, will be interesting. But that is tomorrow. Obviously, George said 10 p.m. So we will most likely go live tomorrow. We might have to go a little bit later because those draws, they usually do like 40 minutes of inductions and introductions to people and showing that it's not rigged and okay, this team can draw this team type thing. So maybe like 10:30 or something we'll go live. But definitely looking forward to that because ultimately, as I said, we do have to enjoy when we're in the Champions League because for the last 5-6 years, it seems like we're in the Europa League every 6 months when we're in the Champions League. And ultimately, if it's PSG or Bayern Munich, we can't get Bayern Munich. But if it's one of these big teams, well, get them now. we're going to play them by the quarters or semis at some stage. So the Champions League is about these big fixtures.
Well, speaking of PSG, the French side, usually French champions, they didn't win last season. Do you think we'll be having our two Frenchmen? Will they still be part of Manchester United, Tom? Paul Pogba and Tony Martial. Do you think those two players will they even be options against PSG?
Martial, no. I think that ship has sailed, and I think the club doing their right thing will look to offload him now in January. Now, he goes in the Lingard category. Now, yes, the club and the player will try and move on. Whether let's say it's Newcastle. I think Lyon have been linked with Anthony Martial. It will come down to a business thing from United, and United don't accept transfer bids they're not happy with. So if they want 35 million for Anthony Martial, not that he's worth that, but if they want 35 million for him, and Lyon are offering 30 million, United aren't going to accept. Now they should be accepting, because otherwise you find yourselves in a hole like Jesse Lingard running out his contract type thing. Lingard to Newcastle, I think, is a little bit more likely because he's out of contract. I think they can see a little bit of just, okay, get rid of him now. We'll take whatever we can get him because Ralph Rangnick isn't going to use him type thing. But Paul Pogba, I think he'll stay. I know we've had the discussion. We will have plenty more discussions in future weeks around his situation. Ultimately, he'll come back and be part of the squad for the rest of the season. Whether that means he has a future at United, I'm not sure, but he'll come back and he'll play. Whether that's the right thing or wrong thing, he will, because you need good footballers in your team, and he's a good footballer at the end of the day. Regardless what you think of attitude or contracts or futures, Ralph Rangnick needs good players. We've all just here criticised Freddie McTominay and given them our best players on the day type thing. Well, ultimately, yes, you do need good footballers in there. So your thoughts there? Okay, Martial, I think you're probably pretty much in agreement with me, but more on the Paul Pogba stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I thought Ralph Rangnick's comments around the Pogba situation were very interesting. Coming out and saying, if I have to convince a player to, this is Manchester United, if I have to convince you to be here, then there's something wrong. Very interesting comments. I think basically he's saying the invitation's there. He obviously rates the player, and he's basically saying, if you want to be part of this project, we're here. If not, though, I think United are going to be in a position. Where are we now? We're in December. I think we'll get a very clear situation on this I think before the new year. And I think it'll be.
I agree, but we've always said that about Paul Pogba. We said, okay, in the next 6 weeks, this will tell us what's going to happen. 6 years later, we still don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but he's literally got 6 months left on his contract. So I think the picture's about to get crystal clear, right? And I think with Ralph Rangnick, I actually like it. It's clearly basically challenging Pogba. I imagine there'll be a conversation that says, look, you need to they'll give him a deadline. They'll ultimately say you need to decide, are you a Manchester United player for the foreseeable future or are you not? And I think if he does choose not to sign, I think you'll actually see him on the outer. I don't know if he'll even be used, to be honest. Ralph Rangnick looks like he's going to be ruthless. I dare say, and I could be wrong here, I think if Pogba takes the decision to not renew his contract, I think there is the potential. You've seen the last of Paul Pogba in a United shirt.
Yeah, we'll be interested.
And I'd back that decision. I really would.
Yeah. I like this point from what George brings up here, but Ralph Rangnick said, which I've always had two sides of the coin to this argument. I can understand sort of certain players at certain stages of their career or injury. I can understand them getting away. But Pogba will stay for now, but you cannot have a guy in Dubai having a holiday, at least watch the team play, which is what Ralph Rangnick said. I think he said any players who have a long-term injury in the future won't be going away. They'll be having the rehab in Manchester in and around the training group type thing, which I like. Sometimes I think maybe if a player like I've called for Harry Maguire in the midst of his real bad form 6 weeks ago, I said he should go to Brazil or go to Dubai or something for 2-3 weeks, put his feet up and rest. So sometimes I think the situation calls for it, but I do like what Ralph Rangnick has said there in terms of, okay, you're injured, but you're still part of this team. You're still part of the club. I think it was nice. But as I said, Ralph Rangnick has done very well, both on and off the pitch so far since his arrival, and long may it continue. But Larry, until tomorrow, hopefully everyone in the chat did enjoy that. Definitely enjoyed sharing our opinions with you. Make sure you do leave a like. If you're new, please subscribe. That would be great. And Larry, until tomorrow night, we'll talk a little bit of Champions League.
Can't wait for that, mate. See you then.
Cheers, mate.